And you know the best thing about the future? It hasn't happened yet.
That's the whole point.
Hey, welcome back to ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy. And did you know that Madam Web was supposed to be good?
What?
That's right. Reports have surfaced online detailing not only the original Terminator-inspired plot of the film, but also its deeper connection to the Marvel Cinematic Universe and Tom Holland's Spider-Man. A connection that runs so deep, they even made a popcorn bucket littered with MCU references. And Madam Web herself, Dakota Johnson, was even under the impression that she was signing on for an MCU movie. Now, a little bit later, I'm going to talk to my friends Tommy and Colton to get their thoughts on what could have been for Madam Web had we gotten this original version of the film. But first, let's take a look at those reports. And by the way, remember ScreenCrush is on all your favorite podcast platforms, and we are running a super summer sale, 20% off the entire site. Check out the links below for cool merch that we designed for you. My personal favorite, she was in the Amazon studying spiders before she died shirt. So, in a recent interview, Dakota Johnson had this to say about the film. It wasn't my fault. There's this thing that happens now where a lot of creative decisions are made by committee, or made by people who don't have a creative bone in their body. And it's really hard to make art that way, or to make something entertaining that way. And I think, unfortunately, with Madam Web, it started out as something and turned into something else. And I was just sort of along for the ride at that point. And she's exactly right. This movie was originally something very different. The original plot of the film would center around the Spider-Women on a mission to save the Web of Life and Destiny's most vital member, Peter Parker. Wait, who? I don't know. It's something to do with Spider-Man, I think.
Which one?
Anyways, the original plan for the film would feature the Spider-Women teaming up to save a pregnant Mary Parker from the villainous Ezekiel Sims, who is a Spider-Man villain from the future, determined to kill Mary Parker and prevent Peter from ever being born. Okay, so it was like an origin story for Tom Holland's Spider-Man? Well, buddy, that's where the messy and directionless nature of Sony Pictures' universe of Marvel characters begins to show. They had no idea which Spider-Man the movie was going to be about. Rumor has it they were open to getting Andrew, Tobey, or even Tom for the role, but Tobey and Andrew were allegedly not interested. And, as we'll discuss in a second, they, Tom Holland specifically, were contractually prohibited from even appearing in the film. I think they could have made this movie without ever needing to show Spider-Man. The specific Peter Parker they were saving wouldn't really matter. The character of Spider-Man is big enough that you could keep it vague. The only thing we really need to know is that there's a bad guy trying to keep one of the most popular superheroes of all time from being born. It writes itself. So why didn't they make that movie? Sounds like a better way to go than what we got. Well, buddy, they did make that movie, but in typical Sony fashion, they made a movie they weren't legally allowed to make, so then they tried to hastily change it. Why do I do these things? What's wrong, little buddy? I'm so tired. I was up late officiating a wedding last night. Yeah! Yeah, I know that feeling. The other night, I met up with two friends who I haven't seen since like pre-COVID, and I way overdid it. Oh, so you know how I feel. Oh, not really, because before I had my first drink, I had a pre-alcohol from ZBiotics. They're the sponsor of this video. Guys, ZBiotics pre-alcohol is one of my all-time favorite sponsors that we work with. Before I have a big night, hell, before I have any night out, I like to pass these things around like they're party favors. Oh, well, what is it? Well, ZBiotics pre-alcohol is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. You see, when you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in your gut. Now, it's this byproduct and not dehydration that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. But of course, remember to drink this probiotic before drinking alcohol, drink responsibly, and get a good night's sleep so you can have your best tomorrow. Anytime I ever go out, I always take a ZBiotics pre-alcohol. I want to be able to have a good time and go to the gym the next day instead of being stuck on the couch. I feel like I'm stuck in a couch. Right? So I highly recommend you stock up on ZBiotics pre-alcohol by going to zbiotics.com/ScreenCrush. Click the link in the description to get 15% off your first order at checkout. Or you can do what I do and just have a monthly subscription delivered straight to your door by using my code ScreenCrush. Believe me, you are going to want to stock up. ZBiotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you are unsatisfied for any reason, they're going to refund your money, no questions asked. So just click that link below and you will not regret it. I regret everything. Now back to what I was saying. So in Madam Web, we have some abhorrent expositional ADR that was used to completely alter the plot of the film. Now ADR is the redubbing of audio done after the fact to change what the actors were saying or to, get audio that's more cleaner than what they got on set. And they used this effect primarily with Ezekiel to change his mission from stopping the birth of Spider-Man to instead preemptively killing the Spider-Women who would kill him in the future. And what's hilarious is you can actually see the bones of this original movie throughout with the pointless inclusion of the Parkers that now just comes off as gimmicky.
What the hell is that? Everyone's got a gimmick now.
Yeah, but why would they change the story and take out all the Spider-Man stuff?
Because, in accordance with Sony's deal with Marvel Studios, Sony actually can't make live-action movies with Peter Parker or Spider-Man without Marvel Studios being involved. The first time they tried this was with the first Venom movie. Now, it's been widely reported that they filmed a cameo scene with Tom Holland for the Venom movie. He wasn't even in the Spider-Man suit, just in his street clothes. But when Marvel Studios caught wind of this, they had Sony remove it. Because including Tom Holland explicitly implies a connection to the MCU, and Marvel understandably doesn't want a film they have zero involvement with to carry the "hey, we're in the MCU" banner. I mean, Feige's face in this interview with Amy Pascal says it all.
So there is a chance that Tom Holland as Spider-Man will pop up somewhere over there? There's always a chance.
Oh, there are several things I would like to say.
Colton, you flunked out of law school. Explain the whole custody battle over Spider-Man.
True, but I am a child of divorce, so I've got you covered. In Sony's deal with Marvel Studios, Sony is legally prohibited from using Peter Parker or Spider-Man in any of their live-action films. They cannot even utter his name. That's why in Madam Web, we kept getting instances where they almost said his name, but never actually did.
He's not named Steven. You guys are ice cold. Cassie, what's your guess? Ben? The name is...
Sony can make all the animated Spider-Man movies they want, and they can make all the live-action Spider-Man movies without Spider-Man that they want, like Venom, Morbius, Kraven, and Madam Web. They can even feature any Spider-Man-related character they want in these Spider-Manless Spider-Man movies that they are making, such as the Parkers. But what they can't do is use or really even reference Peter Parker. It would be disadvantageous for the MCU's Spider-Man if Sony was simultaneously releasing live-action Spider-Man movies on their own with a different actor playing Peter Parker, or if Sony was willy-nilly just using Tom Holland's Spider-Man in their villain films without Marvel Studio having a say in the creative direction, because his Spider-Man is directly connected to the MCU, and Marvel is contractually given the right to have a say in the creative direction of this character. And you have to remember, at the time, the MCU had a reputation to uphold. But for some reason, they keep putting themselves through hell by including Spider-Man elements in their films, hoping that Marvel just won't notice, but like Baskin-Robbins, Marvel always finds out.
He found out.
Marvel Studios
always finds out.
Well, hold on, they did have Holland's Spider-Man appear in the post-credits for Venom Let There Be Carnage. But to use your point, they did reuse footage and audio from Far From Home and No Way Home, filming nothing new. And they had Venom refer to him simply as... It's also worth mentioning that, according to Kevin Feige, Sony actually worked with Marvel Studios to make that scene happen and to set up Spider-Man No Way Home. And this clearly established that Venom was in a different universe and not the MCU.
Tell me again about your purple alien that loves stones.
But Sony couldn't even make that work. Venom has no role in No Way Home. It was just a big, empty, insulting tease that went nowhere and was ultimately retconned in Venom The Last Dance, once again showing us that Sony is making these movies flying by the seat of their pants, and with a film it first, ask permission later mentality that never seems to pan out. The same thing happened with the Vulture in the Morbius post-credits scene.
Has to do with Spider-Man, I think.
Are you sure about that?
Michael Keaton has even recently come out and said that they had no idea what they were even doing with that cameo.
And even they couldn't quite explain it. And I go, okay, I really don't quite know what you're talking about, or even who some of these people are.
Once again proving that Sony has no plan beyond that of teasing a connection to Spider-Man in their Spider-Man-less Spider-Man movies, hoping that it'll get butts in the seats for their next monstrosity. It's clear that Sony desperately wants to be in the MCU without having to play by any rules, answer to Kevin Feige, or share any of the profits. And that brings me to the recalled popcorn bucket for Madam Web that I want to break down with Tommy and Colton. But now I'm joined by two of my all-time favorite people. We have the guy who's trapped in the television and doesn't know it, so please don't tell him, Colton Ogburn, and the guy who's always on break, Tommy Bechtold. Colton and Tommy, so I want to talk about this popcorn bucket, right? I want to talk about how Sony tried to were a barnacle attaching themselves to the ship of the MCU. And then I kind of want to go over what scenario their plan for a Spider-Man-less Spider-Man universe could have actually worked, right? I've got some ideas on how maybe Venom could have been the main character and Kraven, everybody could have been a part of this. But before we get to that, let's talk about this popcorn bucket. So the report is from various sources, /film, Cinema Blend, etc., that there was a different popcorn bucket for Madam Web that wasn't just the generic logo. it's actually pretty cool. It's a Daily Bugle wraparound with the Daily Bugle, the same masthead that we saw in the Raimi movies. And then, according to people who saw it, and it's sort of like the bucket was recalled, so we have to go off third-hand reports. We've got them written down here. There's a few different things that were on this that are MCU related or Spider-Man related. A Daily Bugle headline complains that Stark Industries underpays its workers. Doctor Strange headline says he's become a Las Vegas magician. Bruce Banner is accused of steroids in a sensational Bugle story. That one especially is stupid, but maybe a tabloid like that to me just sounds like some executive went, or a marketing person went, well, he's big, so what if he did steroids, right? And they never actually saw a movie with him in it. Groot was promoted as the host of a new talk show. 10 out of 10 would watch. Sounds like the new Space Ghost. And if you guys want to chime in on any of these, let me know.
Well, I was just going to say, some of these sound like a lot more like the J. Jonah Jameson of the MCU, like the more like conspiracy theory, like wild ass stuff.
As Bruce Banner using steroids. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, okay, that's cool then. I like that. That like Alex Jones type.
I think it's a great kind of aping of the New York Post, right? Where like historically, the New York Post has been used to like do hit pieces on famous people and try to like, basically anyone with influence in the Post will use that as a way to like depower their enemies. So it's like painting Doctor Strange as a Vegas magician is obviously would be very embarrassing for him, would be like kind of a demotion from Sorcerer Supreme. So I think like it is fun to have those things, although they seem very silly. It is interesting and I think a great mirroring of society.
Hey, in universe, as a J. Jonah Jameson thing, it makes total sense. I still long for the idea that, I mean, I think we all do, that Marvel's phases 4, 5, and 6 would have been less cluttered and better planned. Because I think there is a universe where Thunderbolt Ross becomes president, Kingpin's mayor, they crack down on superheroes, and J. Jonah Jameson is kind of like this mouthpiece for their agenda. Mm-hmm. That would have been really cool, but that's not what we got. Also, hold on, but wait, there's more. We had a Doc Ock featured. He was featured opening a new clinic post Spider-Man 2 No Way Home. So basically, like, after the events of No Way Home, he returned to his universe and apparently didn't die, which is like a whole, that alone would have been a whole video of proof, being like, if this popcorn bucket's canon, then it means that in No Way Home they did indeed completely change these realities and split the multiverse off in different directions. Again, I don't think they considered all those consequences when they made the bucket. Do you guys?
No, I almost wonder if this was more of a device for like the original plot that was like meddling with time and making like ensuring things happen in the way that they're supposed to go. There's the different ramifications for people. So to me, it's just more of a like, well, if Madam Web is moving throughout time to make sure that Peter Parker is born safely or whatever, the Terminator, the proposed Terminator storyline, then perhaps these are the consequences of it. Some very glib and silly, or some very lighthearted, and others, maybe more impactful in the MCU.
I think this.
Right.
I think this bucket is a prime example of what we'll talk about here shortly, of exactly why Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios were like, pull the bucket, change the plot, say nothing about Spider-Man, or we'll see you in court.
But I'll say this, the bucket's a good idea. Like, if I would have had, if this bucket existed for a Spider-Man movie, this is cool as shit. I would love to have this bucket. Also, but hold on, we've got a few others this want to run through really quick. There was Thanos coverage of Thanos cults and theories. Something that I think it happened in the comic. No, it didn't actually. That was an idea I had for a comic years ago.
Well, like the Thanos was right thing, though.
Thanos. Yeah, or Thanos is right. Drax the Destroyer was depicted wearing a suit and being interviewed in the Daily Bugle's pages. Fine. Carol Danvers is mentioned as a potential future U.S. president. And Thor the Bugle was teasing rumors about him having an illegitimate child. Again, it's interesting to see. I agree with you guys. I think it would have been really fun tied into J. Jonah Jameson as like hey, this is like over here next to the MCU, but not actually a part of it. It is so weird though how you're taking this concept from the comic books, right? The multiverse, going back to like Flash of Two Worlds and the stuff that we've been used to for years. And I think you can read in this that these executives understood that there was a way to make money off of this, because they could claim that oh, our thing is part of that thing because of Multiverse. And DC, people forget this now, DC pre-James Gunn, post-Snyder, were trying to call it the DC Extended Multiverse because they wanted to say that Joker was part of the same universe as Ben Affleck's Batman. I think we're starting... I'm glad fans have rejected the multiverse concept because they focused on those aspects of it and not what actually makes it fun. But it's so weird because Ezekiel Sims, we're talking about him as a time traveler, he's a multiverse character. In the comics, that's his whole thing. He's from this family that hunts spider people across dimensions and totems, and that's what he does, but they didn't even go with that aspect. So, guys, I mean, I think this just shows they really were just most interested in trying to tie it to Spider-Man any way they could instead of actually making it about the Web of Life and Destiny. Do you guys think this original plot would have been better? Tommy, what are your thoughts?
I was very excited when this original plot leaked, and it was the idea of taking Madam Web, which when the title was announced as a standalone movie, I was kind of like, oh, okay, I guess that'll be cool. And then making it into a, like, we've got to go back in time to ensure Peter Parker's birth happens, and also the inclusion of Adam Scott as Ben, or not? Yeah, is he Ben Parker? Yeah, he's Ben Parker. Adam Scott as Ben Parker. I was like, well, that's a really good casting, and that'll be really fun to see him as a big part of this movie. Obviously, that's not what we got. So yeah, I do think that original storyline is way more effective, way more impactful than just like this guy being like, oh, these three kids and this woman team up to kill me one day, so I have to kill them first. Like that's we've seen the, like, you know, you got to go back in time to kill your killer thing done in you know 90s kind of loose sci-fi junk movies. I just felt like I felt like it was like everything we've talked about. They created the most forgettable story out of what seemed like such a strong story idea in its inception, which was obviously based on Marvel and Marvel Studios being like, you don't even whisper his name, don't even say park, don't even go to a park in this movie, and don't.
I got a thought for you. Let me just lay this out there because I do think about this Sonyverse a lot, right? And how it was obviously guided by money people and not by creatives. And I think your best person is always a combination of the two. Like Kevin Feige is a person who loves movies first, understands finance. Dick Ebersol, who took over SNL show running for 5 years, did a pretty good job because he understood the network side, he understood the talent side, right? I wonder if there's a version of this where, and it's interesting because Madam Web is the multiverse, the Web of Life and Destiny. So in theory, Sony could have put together a better multiverse than Marvel. And here's how I think they could have done it. They have access to characters like Silver Sable. Okay, so Silver Sable could be from a different universe that is very much like 1960s James Bond spycraft, right? That would have been sweet. Madam Web, and you know, maybe instead of doing the Terminator thing, and after Peter Parker, even if they do that, instead of Peter Parker, make it about Julia Carpenter. I know that at the time Sydney Sweeney hadn't broken as big as she is now, but imagine it had been about like one of those Spider Women. Hell, Isabella Merced, she's also huge. They could have done that, kept a singular focus on one person and made that person kind of the new protagonist, the hero protagonist of this universe. They could have just still done this. They could have even had Adrian Toomes in the universe and just never said, yeah, he came over from another universe. They could have just implied all of these things, kept Eddie Brock the main character. The Venom symbionts also linked to the multiverse. I think they could have had really cool separate stories based on some of these Spider-Man fringe characters that, you know, were told by creatives who were passionate about, like, telling, say, a Silver Sable story or a Black Cat story, and they could have stood on their own. But instead, Colton, they just wouldn't leave Spider-Man alone. They just could not get it out of their head, and it blew everything up in their face.
Well, I've always thought it would be cooler if they had made Venom the centric focus of their universe. That was their first film that did really well, much to the chagrin of Ryan. Ryan, I think you were saying, like, don't go see Venom or they'll keep this going.
I did. Fans screwed up. Fans screwed up really big because if Venom would have flopped, Sony would have sold the rights back to Marvel a long time ago, and then we would have had a proper Venom in the MCU. And I don't think any of those movies was worth the deluge of shit we've gotten from Sony that resulted from giving those executives an overconfidence boost.
Not even when we got Horse Venom? Horse Venom wasn't enough to win you over?
It should have been. I watched that trailer and I was like, 1 ticket to the Venom Horse movie, please. And then I saw the movie and I was like, and that's the other thing too. You can tell there was a seed in here, right? That they were hoping to get their own villain Avengers to fight Null. That there was like some kind of plan, and that maybe Madam Web would be the one to bring them together, and then the Spider Women would get 3 separate spin-offs.
But that's the thing. There was no plan. There was, we'd like this, but we don't want to put in the proper like effort to make it happen. But like to your point,
like Amazing 2, right?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. They just repeated the exact same thing. In fact, it is wild when you look back at how they completely, screwed the pooch on the Amazing Spider-Man thing, and then they go and they do the same thing again in this Spider-Manless Spider-Man universe. But to your point about Venom, yes, it would have been so much cooler. Just swap out the Web of Life and Destiny with the symbiote hive mind thing. Have Venom be your centric character. Have Madam Web. I'm not super familiar with Madam Web in the comics. Isn't her suit like a symbiote?
Is, which means it's a ridiculous premise for a movie.
Doesn't she have like a symbiote suit or something like that? Like her
later
body
on,
type.
but that's look. The thing about the Venom symbiote suit is it's kind of like an adult film where like everybody gets a shot at everybody at a certain point, because like the Punisher's been Venom, Mary Jane has been Venom, everybody has been Venom at some point in this universe. It's been totally devalued, in my opinion.
Well, first of all, I don't appreciate you slut-shaming Venom, but no.
It's not. Hey, I didn't use that word. You used that word. I said tasteful adult films, right? I'm talking like Showtime at 12:01. You know what I mean?
Red Shoe Diaries. I like that. Black Symbiote Diaries. I think we're good.
Here's what I'll say. I feel like we're doing a lot of like Monday morning quarterbacking. Is that right? Is that the right phrase, Tommy? You're the sports guy. I never know.
Wait, what about Monday Night Football? Wait.
We're coming soon to ScreenCrush, my breakdowns of Monday Night Football.
No, I understand. No, Monday morning quarterbacking, when you talk about the home runs they hit the night before when the guy got a hat trick. Yeah. Exactly.
We're saying what they should have done with this movie, but the problem is that they made one movie, and then in the edit, and like you talked about earlier, Ryan, with like redubbing and stuff, they completely altered the movie into something else. And it just feels like Sony, they're so sneaky and like conniving. It's like they want their cake and to eat it too. It's like they want all of these MCU references and stuff, but they don't want to go through the extra steps of actually working with Feige and having to share creative control with Feige.
Well, I think the problem, like what we're saying is that like Sony's commitment to these movies is basically to try to convince you that they're part of the MCU when they're clearly not, or that they're attached to them. And it's a lot like the way in big cities there'll be restaurants that want to make you think they're part of a bigger restaurant franchise. Like in Los Angeles, there's a lot of burger joints. There's a famous burger joint called Tommy's. Well, there's a lot of knockoff burger joints called Tom's that have the same lettering, the same design, the similar menus, but they're not as good.
McDougal's,
exactly. And it's a real thing, and I think like Sony's commitment is to be like, look, this is almost like this. Come see these movies, and they're loosely related to them, but they don't have anywhere near the quality of the storytelling. Like all of these movies fall short in the product. The product is always something far inferior to an MCU movie, and that's where fans. It doesn't pass the smell test, even in the trailers and even in screenings.
Well, Colton, Sony's not just doing this with Marvel movies, though. They do it with their own movies. Do you remember the Morbius trailer where we had the Spider-Man graffiti and that wasn't in the movie and the tomb shot? Colton, what do you think about that, about Sony just like kind of stepping in and trying to trick people into thinking that their bullshit is part of a better franchise? Could just make a better franchise.
It's incredibly frustrating, and I know first world problems, but it's insulting. I think it's kind of insulting because, like you said earlier, they did the same thing with the Amazing Spider-Man, and then like they realized how bad they screwed up, and so they put Spider-Man in the MCU, and they make this deal, with Disney and all that, and now they're just repeating all of the same mistakes. every time it takes me back to has something to do with Spider-Man, I think, that Vulture line. And
Which was clearly just a marketing person saying, look, we just need him to come in, just say it's got to have something to do with Spider-Man, right? Just have him say something like that. And then the intern was like, you got it, boss.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say,
off and gave them that as the script.
To Tommy's point about that burger chain, I have a friend named Tommy who I think is trying to milk off of that popular burger chain as well.
And that's shocking because we really don't approve of people hawking their own products on this channel. It's just, I've said it time and time again.
I'm hungry. There's really only one thing that's going to satisfy this hunger. That's one of my delicious burgers. Check the link below.
Really, because oftentimes when I get hungry, I like a good meal from Factor.
I like a Madam Web popcorn.
Man, I'm desperate to see that actual popcorn bucket, though, because that would be like, I would display it like prominently, but that's right up there with, you know how like when people lose the Super Bowl, Tommy, you're a Bills fan, you know this, like when the Bills lost the Super Bowl for 4 years in a row, but those Bills championship jerseys still exist.
I feel like it's
but
like
they give them to like third world countries.
It's like it's a multiversal artifact that's not supposed to exist, and you would find it in the TVA.
It's in the void.
Exactly.
In the void. It's like Polybius, right?
Well, I'll tell you what, if they make another Deadpool movie where he goes through the void, they better have those buckets in a pile. That would be a great
they need
Easter
to have
egg.
that shot where we saw like Frog Thor in a jar. We need to see the Madam Web popcorn bucket in the ground.
Along with the Aunt May Solo movie, Black Cat and Silver Sable movie, Andrew Garfield's EDM version of Spider-Man.
All right, over under. In Secret Wars, do we see Deadpool eating out of the Madam Web popcorn bucket?
Dude, I wish they were that clever.
Yeah.
I wish they were that meta. I really do.
That would be awesome.
I know I've gotten into this before, but that Deadpool 3, man, that was like, for all the potential it could have had, I'm just disappointed by it. Do you guys think, after Kraven the Hunter, right? And I was so disappointed in Kraven because I thought it started off as like, cool, like 90s action movie. And then it just got more and more. Poor Ariana DeBose, man. Her management, I hope they've been fired and like kicked out of the business because that's the worst post-Oscar run I've ever seen. And then after Kraven, it was soft announced, we're not doing this anymore. They did extend the deal with Marvel.
But before,
yeah. I wonder what their next plan is. I wonder, like, we're going to talk about this in a little bit about possibilities for ways for Sony to keep making money off this, but let Marvel have all creative control. But do you guys think we've actually seen the end of the Sonyverse? Or do you even think that there's hope in, like, there could be a good version where they reboot it themselves? Or are we just getting tired of interconnected superhero franchises?
I think that there needs to be a uniformity to it. Like, the success of the MCU has been that we trust in Kevin Feige. The hope for the DCU is that we trust in James Gunn and Peter Safran. If they're going to try to actually have a Sony comic book universe, they need to put in a creative team that is consistently informing all of the projects and announce them as a slate, much like Marvel and DC does at conventions or at shows.
Or at the very least, maintaining quality like James Gunn does. I think he's more concerned with quality over continuity.
Yeah, well, they need a strong creative team that is public facing rather than just, like we said, money motivated productions that are kind of at best half baked.
Gunn.
I kind of picture Patrick Bateman running the show right now. Go ahead.
James Gunn is the perfect example of someone who, I mean, he had certainly a career before Marvel, but I think in a lot of ways he was mentored by Kevin Feige, and that's what made him such a perfect choice to now run DC. You would think that Sony would be begging Kevin Feige, please come in here, help mentor and shape someone who can be our Kevin Feige and that you can work together with and create like a cohesive universe. But they just seem to have, they're so self-confident. Like, is Arad still, is it Avi Arad? Is he still involved with Sony? Because I feel like everything is his fault.
I don't think directly. But everything's his fault in the good side of things too. Like, the man was instrumental in getting us X-Men the animated series, which frankly I wouldn't be wearing this shirt if it weren't for X-Men the Animated Series. I'd be working at Burger King right now. Burger King
come work at Tommy's.
Awesome
We're always
Spider-Man tie-in line. Yeah, work at Tommy's. Why not?
I prefer
guys,
Tommy's
I do want to cut
burgers.
us off there. I do too. Guys, I want to cut it off there because I do want to tell you guys, what we actually think that Marvel and Sony could work out that would be both, you're going to be shocked by this, profitable and good. Colton, Tommy, thank you guys so much for joining me. So guys, I get that Sony doesn't want to sell their juggernaut of an IP that is Spider-Man, but why not just license it back to Marvel Studios? Maintain your ownership and let Marvel do all the work. Sure, you'll have to share a bigger cut of the proceeds, but $500 million is a lot more than 100% of $100 million, or a box office percent of the even more pathetic $62 million that Kraven scraped up. With Avengers Secret Wars likely to reset the MCU and have all of Marvel's characters finally in one cohesive universe, I want Spider-Man there. He is a key pillar of Marvel that belongs in this world, unburdened by villain-centric flops that drag his name through the mud. Sony should just hire Marvel Studios to make all of their live-action Marvel-related content. Let Sony Animation keep cooking with the Spider-Verse and let Marvel Studios handle the action realm while you sit back and watch the money flow in. Granted, Marvel themselves aren't in a great place anymore when it comes to the box office and overall perception of the franchise, but I think Doomsday is about to change that. Right now, Sony is in a prime position to make a very advantageous deal with Marvel Studios, who are likely desperate to have Spider-Man and would likely be willing to make a deal that would be really lucrative for Sony. But something tells me that the geniuses over at Sony Pictures that gave us Morbius, Kraven, and Madam Web, they may not be in the market for a good idea. It's very off-brand for them. Well guys, that's just what we think. What do you think about the potential Madam Web movie that we missed out on? Does it sound good or just more crap like the same we saw before? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments or on our free-to-join Discord server. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.